The United States women's national team are out of the World Cup, their quickest exit in the history of the tournament. I think the shock is worn off. Maybe it shouldn't be such a shock based on what we've seen in the World Cup and everything in place. You know, hindsight is 2020, but when you look at everything, once the World Cup gets going, you're like, they're not going to win it. It was pretty clear as day. We're going to get to something here. I don't want to sound too repetitive. We'll cover some themes that I covered in my last video, which, by the way, was one of my best performing videos. So thank you for joining us here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. And like and subscribe is here. Like, subscribe. Thank you for joining the Soccer OG. We're so thrilled to have you. Everybody counts. Everybody matters here. My little audience, I love you guys. So when we look at what happened here for the United States women, we'll have a big picture item, which I will get to at the end of this video, which is great for women's soccer, great for women's sports, great for the Women's World Cup, great for the players, not so great for the U.S. Because this big theme that you have heard ad nauseum about the rest of the world catching up, it happened. What is surprising is that from the 2019 World Cup to the 2023 World Cup, how quickly it occurred. Not just the top catching up, the middle catching to the top, the bottom catching up to the middle. There's not these big gaps between Team 1 and Team 32. I mean, you could drive a bus through these gaps 4 years ago when the United States beat Thailand. Or, you know, it's teams that shouldn't be on the same field. We never really said that once in the World Cup. A couple times. And that's going to go away by the next World Cup also. So the speed in which the catch-up happened is huge. But we're going to get to that big picture item about the world of women's soccer catching up to U.S., what it means and how it happened. Because everything's kind of laid out there. Everything's kind of laid out there. Again, us who cover sports, we kind of have to knock our head against a wall because all of the hints were there. And we should have come out and said the U.S. are going to fall flat. I see it all there. Now you see it. 2020. So we can talk about the game a little bit, which kicked off at 5 a.m. Eastern time. And by the way, could we stop? It was like, it's days like that that makes you want to quit social media when everyone's talking about, hey, are you going to stay up? Are you going to take a nap? Are you going to go to bed early? Stop! It's a game. It's on a weekend. If you don't get enough sleep one night, you can catch up the next. It works. So stop talking about sleep and people, kickoff times. Just shut it. Really? I mean, if you're one of those people, I apologize. Because remember, we're the Soccer OG, but stop. Just stop. So let's talk a little bit about the game. But I think, again, the big picture item that we get to supersedes everything. And by the way, you know, Fox, who I want to talk a little bit about as well. They lost their big baby, right? They lost it for the ratings. You know, I encourage everyone to keep watching because I don't know who's going to win. I would say Japan because they've been the most consistent team scoring goals and getting victories. I like my Spanish pick, but I don't trust them as I trust the Japanese who came with little fanfare and have become, to me, the best team in the tournament. You know, it's not just the U.S. are out. Germany's out. Canada's out. The times are a-changing. You know, South Africa in, Colombia in, Nigeria in. It's the round of 16. It's going to be a fun tournament because, again, we don't know. We knew 4 years ago. We kind of knew 8 years ago. We kind of knew 12 years ago who was going to be there at the end. We don't know now. So we've seen this tournament close considerably, and we'll get to that, but I will talk about the game. The U.S. should have won this game, in my estimation. I did tweet this before the game. I tweeted this before the game. I know the U.S. should have won it, but this game, USA-Sweden, to me was screaming scoreless after 120 minutes and going to penalties, which is exactly what happened. Look at that, time-stamped. I mean, I'm not Nostradamus here. This is not some bold prediction. It was pretty obvious that we got there. And it's part of the reason why the turn of events is so stunning. that because you could see it coming, and the U.S. and Vlatko Andonovski did not adapt or do what was necessary to change the outcome. And if the U.S. had made it through here to the quarterfinals, I think they would have played Japan. I'm recording this before the Japanese game. Oh, I'm sorry, the Japanese are through. I'm losing my train. But it is, I got to say, I mean, the margins were so small in every USA game, and they have such a good defense that maybe they could have made a run. It would have been a little lipstick on a pig kind of analogy, because this isn't the team from 4 years ago. So the team defended valiantly. The Swedish goalkeeper standing on her head. No, I wouldn't say standing on her head. That's a little bit too strong. But making some big saves. And the U.S., made those adjustments. It's really as good as Naomi Girma was the MVP. Julie Ertz, pretty good in a difficult position for her. Alyssa Naylor was fantastic in that penalty shootout. Deserved a better outcome. But the fact that the goal scoring, 2 straight games without a goal, was it like 210 minutes without a goal? Is it right? That's stunning. This is the U.S. women. Can't score goals. It doesn't feel surprising as we saw this tournament unfold, but it was. Couldn't score goals. So that was a big problem. And that would tell you that they weren't going to be around here much longer. You got to score goals. Japan scoring goals, Spain scoring goals, the Dutch scored goals. So if you want to make it through, the English scored goals. You got to score goals. The U.S. just incompetent on that. I don't know how to explain it. I didn't know that the demise of Alex Morgan was so rapid. She shouldn't have been in this tournament. We've said that about Megan Rapinoe. Should not have been in this tournament. And after the way they played, they shouldn't have been in this game. Megan Rapinoe, when I see her warming up, I'm like, this is a joke. Vlatko, have you not seen her play in this tournament? There is no redeeming qualities. And again, I'm not taking a shot at Megan Rapinoe. I'm not taking a shot at Alex Morgan. But this is the U.S. isn't going to be the last team to bring in their legends who are a little bit over the hill. It happens all the time. Famously, when Italy won the 2006 World Cup, and then they came back in 2010 with the exact same team, and they got throttled, lost to Paraguay and New Zealand, and it was like, why? You just wasted a World Cup. Old doesn't translate well in the World Cup. 35, 38, no. You want 25, 28, even younger. But that's the sweet spot. So the U.S. had a commitment to youth, but not in the attack, and that's where they were letting down. By the way, Becky Sauerbrunn would have started if she was here. I don't think that would have helped the defensive effort. This team was screaming to move on. And it's not just because of the lack of production, it's because of the personalities. And I see it there, because all the girls kind of follow Alex Morgan and follow Megan Rapinoe. And they go, yeah, okay. It's like, you got to express yourself. Sophia Smith looked absolutely, I mean, she scored 2 goals in the beginning and then nothing. And I don't think she had a chance to express herself. I'm not letting her off the hook. She had a bad tournament. But I wanted her to lead from the front. I didn't want her to kind of be in the shadows of these other players, but she was. And that's one of the reasons you have to move them out. And again, he didn't do that. I mean, the one thing you would have hoped Megan Rapinoe to come in, and we talk about Megan Rapinoe because she's the biggest star. She in many ways is on this World Cup because of her star power. You know, I've been hearing people tell me, I shouldn't say this because it's not confirmed, but some people said that she was put on this roster because of her commitments to the advertisers, and they needed her whether she was on the roster or playing. I don't believe that, but it doesn't sound so far-fetched when I see how she performed. She had no business being here. And the one thing we hoped she could do is take a penalty, and she missed it terribly. She didn't complete any passes. She turned the ball over. She didn't across. And I know I said this in the last video, but I just want to say that this was part of the failure here. And I stand by the fact when they came out and they were dancing against Portugal, the rest of the world are going, oh, really? Oh, really? Okay, we'll see about that. The rest of the field hates the U.S. They hate the U.S. They are doing backflips. But that's what happens when you're successful. You are the bull of the woods. People want to come after you, and they will celebrate when they knock you off their perch. That's what the responsibility of being the best. And I want to talk about criticism because the U.S. ladies can take it, but we tippy-toe around it way too much. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. I don't want to get crisscrossed too much. Let's wrap up the game. Should have won. Maybe could have gone a little further in this tournament. I think they deserve some respect because the wheels could have come off and they could have lost. They could have just given up, and they didn't. And I thought that was very impressive. And we were sitting on the edge of our seats. Should have won in the penalty shootout. It got away. And that's the way it goes. I'm going to talk about criticism here for a moment because I want to preface this by saying the women of the World Cup are big girls. They can take it. They know what it is to represent your country at the highest level. And if you make a mistake, not to be coddled. I was watching South Africa and the Dutch. And the goalkeeper for South Africa, I believe it's Kalen Swart, had a howler of a play that eliminated South Africa's chances from winning. They were down 1 goal. They were pressing. That ended the game. No one even mentioned it on the broadcast. There was no replays after. There was no replays on the Fox desk afterwards. And I'm like, maybe I'm overblowing this, but I go, that's where you rip Kalen Swart a new one. She goes, goalkeeper, this is not acceptable. Swart knows that. This is how big-time sports operates. Carly Lloyd criticized the U.S. women after the Portugal result and said that the post was the player of the game. She had to come on the next day and kind of apologize. She didn't, but I would imagine the exec said, hey, can you just straighten this out and clarify? I go, why? Why? The U.S. women can take it. I know women's sports are very complicated, and I cannot speak about it because I'm not affected because for so long in women's soccer we've had horrible coaches who have done horrible things, and it's not always about sports for these women. They can't just come out and play. There's harassment and everything that the men don't deal with. So I know it's not apples to apples, and we have to be delicate in a lot of situations. But when it comes to the competitive nature, we've got to be encouraged to take the gloves off. I was stunned. Even when the U.S. were playing horribly, there was no criticism within the games. Maybe Alexi. But there was no real criticism from the games. So it was, we got to get past that. We got to get past that. Let me quickly talk about the big picture. And I want to talk about how proud I am to be an American, where I had some notes here. I am going to get through there. So American sports and the getting women to compete at the high level has been going on for a long time. Title IX, youth participation, a culture, the college system, feeding programs where you could get a scholarship and go. This doesn't happen across the world. They took women's soccer very seriously. They take women's sports seriously in this other country. And in other places, maybe a few other countries, they did. Everywhere else, like Norway and maybe Sweden and Australia and other countries, they don't. And there's no real money in it. There's a lot of money in it here. And now what we're seeing is there's investment in women's sports in Europe, in South America, in Asia, in Africa. It's clear. The league in NWSL, which was the Bull of the Woods leagues. And then the European leagues are emerging, and there's money, and there's interest, and they're selling out stadiums, and the best European players are playing there. And not all the best players play in the NWSL. So there's a disadvantage now for, by and large, the American player, because most of them don't play overseas. They play in NWSL, I think, with a couple exceptions. So the coaching's better in Europe because soccer is the #1 sport. So they can lean into the men's game and get better coaching. I think we're seeing that in the World Cup. South America can get better coaching because they'll coach the women. We have a very old-fashioned means. We've seen it on the men's side. The system doesn't work. You don't have that hunger to play soccer because the best athletes play other sports, and the pathway is complicated where you have to pay to play and all of this. So we never saw it in the women's game because it was so much better than everyone else. We saw it in the men's game and how they were limited. Well, now the women's game is catching up, and I'm going to tell you this, it's going to pass the U.S. by. They have to react here. They have to react in a big way, but I think the American system is going to handicap them, and we aren't going to see a U.S. Women's World Cup triumph in a long time. In a long time. What is that? 3, 4 World Cups? Got to fix it. Because this is a runaway train around the world. And the U.S., or it's the only one that's and Canada, are kind of stagnating. So this is great for the sport. More money, better resources, facilities, coaching, and these teams and this is great for the Europeans and everyone, but not great for the U.S. And I wonder what the legacy is of past World Cups, because the rest of the world was so poor that the U.S. ran right through them in 2019 and kind of in 2015. We shouldn't take anything away from them, but were they that much better, or was the world that much worse? I think it's the latter. So I don't want to like poo-poo on everything, but that is something that I've thought about during all of this. The world has now caught up, and they're going to push ahead. And I'm worried. I am worried. I mean, there's some bright spots. There's a lot of good young players that didn't play. Macario and Swanson, who didn't play on this team, that would have really helped. But they're not getting better. And I don't know. There's good players, but the best players I've seen in this tournament weren't American. They are Linda Casero and so many others that are doing well. So ring the alarm bells. Unless you're a fan of women's sports, and then celebrate. I know we're a little conflicted here. The soccer OG will continue on. We'll wrap up the Women's World Cup. A lot to look forward to with Messi. The European leagues are starting. You're in the right place. This is the show. This is the podcast for you, and we'll see you very soon.